They don't talk about this in mainstream media. They won't. Because a prepared population is a population that doesn't panic, doesn't beg, and doesn't comply. Right now, sitting in your kitchen, you have food. You probably feel good about that. You shouldn't yet. Not because you chose wrong brands, not because you didn't buy enough, but because almost everything society trained you to call survival food only functions under one very specific condition, when the system is still mostly intact. Here's what disaster research quietly confirms, buried in reports most people never read. The average household carries roughly 3 days of genuinely functional food. Not 3 days of calories. 3 days of food that can be opened, eaten, and converted into real working energy, with no electricity, no running water, no functioning stove, and zero time to prepare anything complex. Everything else filling your shelves right now is what I call conditional food. And conditional food is not survival food. When the grid goes cold, your rice is still there. Your pasta is still there. The moment your stove stops working and water stops flowing, both of those become completely and utterly useless to you. So the real question isn't how much food you have stocked. The real question is how much of it still works when every system supporting it has failed. These are the 12 canned foods you need to acquire before serious disruption arrives. Not ranked by what's popular, not ranked by what advertisers push, not ranked by what the mainstream prepper community keeps repeating. Ranked by what actually functions under real collapse conditions. And the item sitting at number 1, almost nobody is talking about it. Let's begin. Number 12, canned soup. I know what you're thinking. Soup? That's the big reveal? Hear me out, because the reason most people dismiss this is exactly why they'll fail. After 48 to 72 hours of genuine crisis, something quiet and dangerous starts happening to the human brain. It doesn't crash dramatically, it slows down. Decision fatigue creeps in like a fog. Tasks that were once automatic, including figuring out what to eat, start feeling impossibly heavy. Here's the dark truth nobody warns you about. People won't skip meals because food ran out. They'll skip meals because the mental energy of preparing food exceeds what their depleted brain will spend. That's precisely the problem canned soup eliminates. Not because it's the most nutritious item on this list, because it eliminates every single variable standing between you and a meal. Open the can, eat, done. Nothing else required. But there's one distinction that determines whether soup actually performs that function when you need it most. Condensed soup still requires water. In a water-restricted scenario, which is most serious scenarios, that one extra step makes condensed soup dangerously unreliable. Ready-to-eat formulations require absolutely nothing. Under real depletion, the gap between 1 step and 0 steps is often the gap between eating and not eating. Here's the other thing the food industry quietly weaponized that actually works in your favor here. The high sodium. Under normal conditions, nutritionists criticize it. Under crisis conditions, it's a functional advantage. Stress and erratic eating patterns accelerate electrolyte loss far faster than most people expect. That sodium actively helps maintain hydration balance and prevents early physical collapse. Collapse that has nothing to do with calories running out. Takeaway: only ever stock ready to eat, not condensed. That single distinction determines whether soup actually saves you. Number 11, canned chili. There's a problem in survival planning that almost nobody addresses directly. Most individual canned foods only solve part of the nutritional equation. Beans give you carbs and protein, but zero fat. Vegetables give you micronutrients, but no sustained energy. Nearly everything on a typical survival shelf needs to be combined with something else to constitute a real meal. And combining things requires thought, energy, decision-making capacity. All resources in severe shortage after a few days of disruption. They want you exhausted and confused. That's when bad decisions get made. Canned chili is one of the rare exceptions that fights back against that design. A single can contains protein from meat, complex carbohydrates from beans, fat from the meat component, and enough flavor to actually maintain your appetite. 400 to 600 calories per container. One can, one complete meal, nothing else required. But there's a second reason chili ranks this high, and it has nothing to do with any nutrition label. Around day 3, something insidious happens to appetite. It doesn't disappear because food is unavailable. It deteriorates because meals that are bland, repetitive, and texturally dead stop triggering the proper appetite response. People shift from eating to sustain to eating just to barely survive. That shift has real physiological consequences. Caloric intake drops, energy drops, cognitive function collapses with it. That's exactly the downward spiral designed environments push you toward. Chili interrupts that cycle. The texture, the flavor complexity, the varied components, the brain registers it as an actual real meal. That recognition matters more than any calorie count printed on a label. Takeaway: choose pull-tab lid versions only. Without a can opener, a standard lid turns a complete meal into something completely inaccessible. Don't let a lid be your downfall. Number 10. Canned beans. Most people think about survival nutrition in terms of raw calories. Eat enough, stay alive. That logic fractures quickly under real conditions. What actually matters is how long each meal keeps you functional before requiring the next one. Because every meal in a disruption costs something: time, fuel, mental bandwidth. Fewer meals means fewer resources drained by the act of eating itself. That's the genuine strategic case for canned beans, and it's more precise than most people ever understand. Beans combine complex carbohydrates with plant-based protein. That pairing produces a slower, more sustained energy release than refined carbs or sugar. A single serving can meaningfully extend the interval between necessary meals. Over several consecutive days under stress, that extension compounds in ways that actually matter to your survival. The comparison to dried beans comes up constantly in prepper circles. Dried beans are cheaper per calorie, that's true. But they require soaking, significant water, consistent fuel to cook safely. Under disrupted conditions, those requirements frequently cannot be met. Canned beans carry none of those conditions. Open the can, eat. That's it. Here's a detail almost everyone gets catastrophically wrong: the liquid inside the can. Most people pour it directly down the drain without a second thought. That liquid contains soluble minerals and electrolytes leached from the beans during processing. Add it to soup. Drink it directly. Incorporate it into any preparation at hand. Nutrients recovered at zero additional cost. Wasting it means wasting resources you cannot afford to waste. Takeaway: rotate across types: black beans, chickpeas, kidney beans, lentils. Nutritionally similar, but variety prevents the food fatigue that quietly erodes your actual caloric intake after several days. Number 9. Canned chicken. Around day 3 or 4, something specific happens that almost no preparation guide in the mainstream dares to address. It isn't hunger. It isn't exhaustion. It's the absence of meat. Not protein as a macronutrient on a label. The actual physical experience of eating meat, the texture, the resistance, the act of chewing through something with real substance. Soft foods satisfy your caloric needs. They do not satisfy the neurological expectation built into human eating behavior over thousands of years of conditioning. That absence doesn't register as a caloric deficiency. It registers as a psychological one. And that affects behavior in ways most people don't anticipate, including voluntarily skipping meals and experiencing a measurable decline in morale. A demoralized population makes desperate choices. Don't become one of them. Canned chicken counters this without refrigeration, without heat, without any preparation beyond opening the container. The nutritional case is equally strong. A standard can provide 40 to 50 grams of complete protein. Under elevated physical demand and poor recovery, muscle degradation begins within days, not weeks. Adequate protein slows that process during exactly the period when physical capacity matters most. Canned chicken is better understood as a multiplier than a standalone item. Mix it into rice and you have a protein-complete meal. Add it to soup and you substantially raise nutritional density. Combine it with canned tomatoes and beans and you have a complete dish from almost nothing. Takeaway: once opened, consume the full can immediately or transfer contents to a sealed container for use right away. Without refrigeration, partial storage leads to rapid spoilage. Protein is a resource you absolutely cannot afford to waste. If this information is waking something up for you, something they've been trying to keep dormant, drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. More people need to see this than currently do. Number 8. Canned tuna. Most survival guides treat cognitive function as secondary. Something to worry about after physical needs are addressed. That ordering is backwards at one line, and I'd argue it's deliberately backwards in the mainstream prepper space. The decisions you make during a disruption about resource allocation, movement, risk assessment, who to trust, determine outcomes more directly than caloric intake alone. Decision quality is entirely dependent on brain function, and brain function depends on specific nutritional inputs that most canned foods simply do not provide. Most canned foods maintain the body. Canned tuna does something more targeted. It supports the brain. Tuna is a concentrated source of omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA and EPA. These are the long-chain forms the human brain uses for cell membrane structure and neurotransmitter function. A deficit in these compounds doesn't produce dramatic, visible symptoms. It produces something far more insidious: gradual cognitive degradation, slower processing speed, reduced working memory, impaired decision-making under pressure. Under normal conditions, this deficit takes weeks to become noticeable. Under sustained stress, that timeline compresses dramatically. The research on omega-3 status and cognitive performance is among the most consistently documented nutritional findings available, and it's consistently underemphasized in mainstream circles. No preparation required, no heat, no added water. One can stretches across 2 or 3 separate meals and integrates into virtually any base preparation. Rice, crackers, soup, pasta, whatever you're working with. Water-packed offers more versatility. Oil-packed offers higher caloric density. A real advantage in cold environments or high exertion scenarios. Takeaway: use tuna deliberately, not continuously. Rotate it in as a targeted cognitive support item, rather than burning through your supply as a daily staple. Number 7. Canned meat. Ask most people what the body needs most during a sustained crisis. They'll say protein, maybe carbohydrates. Almost nobody says fat. That omission is not accidental. Fat has been systematically vilified by mainstream nutrition narratives for decades. You've been conditioned to fear it. That conditioning could cost you your life under the wrong circumstances. Here's what they don't emphasize. Carbohydrates produce energy quickly. Protein maintains tissue integrity. But sustained physical output, especially in cold conditions or during extended exertion without adequate rest, requires fat as a primary fuel source in a way nothing else fully replicates. Fat delivers more than twice the caloric density per gram compared to protein or carbohydrates. More critically, it burns slowly and steadily, providing sustained output energy across long intervals without requiring additional intake. This is exactly the fuel profile a crisis demands. Canned meat, shelf-stable beef, pork products, potted meat preparations, delivers both protein and significant fat in a single container. No cooking, no refrigeration, no preparation of any kind. Caloric density per unit volume is substantially higher than most other items in this category. Here's the point that surprises most people conditioned by mainstream nutritional messaging. The high sodium content most instinctively recoil from is actually a functional advantage under these conditions. It supports fluid retention and electrolyte balance during periods of irregular eating and physical stress. Not a drawback, a feature. Recognize the difference. Takeaway: don't eat it alone. Pair canned meat with a carbohydrate source. The combination of fat and carbohydrate produces far more stable extended energy output than either consumed separately. That difference becomes very real after day 2. Number 6. Canned tomatoes. By day 3 of eating exclusively from a stockpile, the crisis most people encounter isn't shortage. It's refusal. And this is the part nobody in the mainstream prepper community talks about honestly. The brain's appetite regulation system is deeply dependent on sensory variety. When every single meal looks, smells, and tastes identical, same texture, same flat salt profile, same absence of brightness, the appetite signal weakens. Eating stops being automatic. It becomes a deliberate act of willpower. And under sustained psychological stress, willpower is not a renewable resource you can keep drawing from indefinitely. Canned tomatoes solve this problem, and this is the most underestimated problem on this entire list. Acidity is one of the primary triggers for saliva production and appetite stimulation. Adding diced or crushed canned tomatoes to an otherwise flat bean or rice preparation fundamentally transforms the sensory experience of that meal. That sounds trivial. Across 5 consecutive days, it's what keeps caloric intake from declining to levels that begin affecting physical performance and cognitive clarity. There's a nutritional angle the mainstream consistently buries too. The canning process actually increases the bioavailability of lycopene, a compound with documented antioxidant properties relevant to immune function under physical stress. The processing that seems like it degrades the food is actually making one of its key compounds more accessible to your body. Store multiple formats and multiply your functional range. Crushed tomatoes for sauces, diced for stews, paste for concentrated flavor using minimal quantity for maximum efficiency, and minimal storage footprint. Takeaway: canned tomatoes don't replace anything else on this list. They make everything else on this list edible for longer. That function is completely irreplaceable. Number 5, canned vegetables. The human body doesn't signal micronutrient deficiency immediately. That biological delay is normally a useful feature. In a crisis context, it becomes a dangerous liability. Vitamins and minerals operate beneath the threshold of conscious awareness during normal function. Their absence doesn't announce itself with dramatic, obvious symptoms in the early days. It shows up gradually: slower recovery from physical exertion, reduced immune responsiveness, declining tissue repair capacity. By the time those symptoms are recognizable enough to diagnose, the deficit has been compounding silently for days. This is the precise gap in almost every calorie-focused stockpile you'll see recommended in mainstream prepper circles. And it's exactly the gap canned vegetables fill. The case for variety is functional, not aesthetic. Canned green beans provide fiber and vitamin K. Canned corn provides B vitamins and a meaningful carbohydrate contribution. Canned spinach provides iron and folate. No single vegetable covers the full micronutrient range the body requires under sustained stress. Rotating across types isn't a preference, it's a functional requirement. Low sodium formulations are preferable wherever available. You can always add salt at the point of consumption. You cannot remove it once it's sealed inside. Keeping that control matters when options are limited, and every variable counts. And here's the detail almost everyone ignores, just like with beans: the liquid in the can. Most people discard it reflexively. It contains water-soluble vitamins and minerals leached from the vegetables during processing. Add it to soup, incorporate it into a stew, drink it directly. Nutrients recovered at zero additional cost every time. One more point worth stating plainly: the visual variety of vegetables in an otherwise monotone meal creates a perceptual signal of normalcy: green, yellow, orange. In an environment where nearly every sensory marker of normal life has been systematically removed, that signal carries a documented stabilizing effect on psychological state. Psychological stability is an operational resource. Anything that preserves it has measurable value. Takeaway: stock multiple types. Choose low sodium where available. Never discard the liquid. Every part of the can has value. Wasting any of it is a choice you'll regret. Still here? Good. The people who stay to the end are exactly the kind of people who actually prepare. Like this video, subscribe, and drop a comment below telling me which item shocked you most. Number 4. Sweetened condensed milk. Most survival nutrition planning operates on a hidden assumption so fundamental that almost nobody questions it. The assumption that the person will be willing and physically capable of consuming normal solid food. It sounds obvious. It also breaks down more frequently than any guide will tell you. Sustained nausea from acute stress, extreme physical fatigue, gastrointestinal disruption caused by sudden dramatic dietary changes. Any of these can create conditions where solid foods become genuinely difficult to consume. Not because they're unavailable, because the body won't cooperate with the act of eating them. When that happens, the rest of your carefully assembled stockpile becomes temporarily useless. And that's when people make desperate decisions they later regret. Sweetened condensed milk was engineered for exactly this scenario, even if that's not how it gets marketed. A single standard can contain over 1,000 calories in a liquid format that is easy to consume, easy to digest, and requires zero preparation whatsoever. For someone in a state of severe nausea or deep physical depletion, it provides a viable pathway to caloric intake that solid food simply cannot offer in that moment. That pathway is more valuable than its calorie count suggests. There's also a psychological dimension worth acknowledging directly. Sweetness is the taste profile most consistently associated with comfort and perceived safety in human neurological conditioning. It's hardwired. Under acute stress, even a small amount of something sweet produces a measurable reduction in perceived threat level. This is a physiological response, not mere comfort seeking, and it carries real functional value in high-stress conditions. Here's the critical limitation stated clearly because nobody else will state it this plainly. Condensed milk is very high in sugar. Without balancing it against slower digesting carbohydrates and protein, it produces a sharp energy spike, followed by an equally sharp crash. It is not a meal replacement. Think of it as a system restart, something to restore minimal function, followed immediately by more complete nutrition. Takeaway: store it for the moments when nothing else is working. Use it to get functional again, then follow immediately with real food. Number 3. Canned pumpkin. Most people think about survival nutrition across 3 dimensions: calories, protein, maybe vitamins. What almost nobody accounts for is the third system that quietly begins failing around day 2 or 3. And when it fails, it undermines everything else you've done to prepare. Digestion. The foods most commonly recommended for stockpiling share a specific damaging nutritional profile: dense, dry, and critically low in fiber. White rice, crackers, pasta, canned meat, processed beans. Consumed over multiple consecutive days without any fiber source, the digestive system slows dramatically. Absorption efficiency drops. Physical discomfort escalates. The desire to eat drops with it. This creates a compounding collapse. The inability to properly process food reduces both caloric utility and appetite, which then accelerates the exact nutritional decline your stockpile was built to prevent. You can have food and still be starving through inefficiency. Canned pumpkin is the most effective and most systematically overlooked solution to this specific problem. But there's a label distinction that determines whether it actually works. And most people get this wrong in stores every single time. 100% pure pumpkin puree contains nothing but pumpkin. Pumpkin pie filling contains added sugar, spices, and sodium. None of those additions serve the digestive function you need. Buying the wrong one renders this item completely useless for its intended purpose. Read the label, read it twice. The correct product delivers meaningful dietary fiber in a gentle, non-irritating form. It restores digestive motility gradually, which is exactly what a stressed, disrupted system needs. Not dramatic intervention, baseline maintenance. Beyond fiber, pumpkin is a concentrated source of beta-carotene, which the body converts to vitamin A. Vitamin A supports immune function, skin barrier integrity, and mucosal health, all deeply relevant in conditions where minor injuries are more frequent and immune challenges are elevated. Takeaway: pure pumpkin puree only. Read the label every time. Mix it into other preparations rather than eating it alone. A small amount dramatically improves the digestibility and nutritional profile of the entire meal around it. Bonus: apple cider vinegar, canned or bottled. This one almost never appears on any mainstream survival list. That's exactly why it belongs here. Apple cider vinegar has documented antimicrobial properties that can help preserve food and reduce contamination risk. In disrupted conditions, foodborne illness isn't just uncomfortable. It's dangerous, potentially life-threatening, and resource-draining. A small amount added to questionable water or food can reduce microbial load meaningfully. It also supports digestive function, critical when you're eating unusual combinations of dense, unfamiliar foods in stressful conditions. Additionally, the acidity serves the same appetite stimulation function as canned tomatoes. It transforms flat, monotone meal combinations into something the brain registers as genuinely palatable. Small bottle, enormous functional range. Takeaway: one bottle takes almost no space. The functional range it provides is disproportionate to its size and cost. Add it to your list without hesitation. Number 2, an evaporated milk. There's a category of breakdown in prolonged crisis scenarios that mainstream survival guides systematically ignore. It has nothing to do with caloric shortage or physical safety. It's the loss of routine, the small rituals that frame daily life. Morning coffee, a recognizable breakfast, a meal that actually feels like a meal. These aren't soft comforts you can discard. They anchor the psychological understanding that basic order still exists. They mark time. They signal to the nervous system that life remains manageable. When those rituals disappear suddenly and completely, the effect on morale and cognitive function is measurable. It happens faster than anyone expects. And a destabilized population, or a destabilized individual, makes decisions from fear rather than reason. Evaporated milk is one of the very few stockpile items capable of partially preserving those anchors. Diluted with water in a 1-to-1 ratio, it produces a liquid nutritionally and texturally close to whole milk. Coffee becomes coffee again. Porridge takes on a familiar consistency. Meals built entirely from canned goods retain something that feels recognizable, even human, in conditions designed to strip that away. In an environment where nearly every other sensory marker of normal life has been eliminated, that recognition matters more than most prepared people ever realize before they actually need it. The nutritional case is equally solid and consistently underemphasized. Evaporated milk provides calcium, phosphorus, and vitamin D, nutrients that support skeletal integrity and muscle function. Under sustained physical stress and disrupted sleep patterns, declining calcium status builds slowly and compounds over days. You won't feel it immediately, but once it develops, recovery becomes progressively harder. Here's what separates evaporated milk from sweetened condensed milk, a distinction worth understanding with precision. Evaporated milk contains no added sugar. It doesn't spike blood glucose. It doesn't create the thirst response that high sugar products generate. It integrates neutrally into almost any preparation, which makes it far more versatile as a daily use item across the duration of a real crisis. One storage detail worth implementing immediately: rotate your cans periodically. Upside down for a period, then right side up. This reduces fat separation during long-term storage and maintains more consistent product quality when you actually need to open them. Takeaway: store it for the preservation of routine. Coffee, porridge, anything that makes a meal feel like a meal again. No refrigeration required. Long shelf life. One of the highest utility to storage space ratios on this entire list. Bonus: canned coconut milk. Another item mainstream lists dismiss as niche. That dismissal is a mistake. Coconut milk is calorie-dense in a way that most plant-based canned items simply aren't. A single can delivers significant fat content. The medium-chain triglycerides in coconut fat are metabolized faster than most dietary fats, providing relatively quick-access energy alongside the sustained burn of longer-chain fats. It's a direct replacement for evaporated milk for those who don't consume dairy. And in hot conditions, where fat-heavy foods from animal sources can feel heavy and difficult, coconut milk integrates into preparations in a way that feels lighter but still delivers real caloric density. Added to rice, it transforms a completely flat caloric base into something with flavor, fat, and palatability. In a world where appetite preservation is one of your primary survival challenges, that transformation is not trivial. Takeaway: especially valuable for anyone avoiding dairy, or as a flavor and calorie multiplier in hot environment or extended scenarios. You've made it this far, Nyan, which means you're the kind of person who actually finishes what they start. That matters. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which of these you're adding to your cart this week. Number 1. Canned sardines. If this entire list distills down to one principle, it's this one. In a genuine crisis, functional value is not the same as perceived value. What people stockpile reflects what they enjoy under normal, comfortable, stable conditions. What actually sustains them when conditions collapse is determined by a completely different set of criteria. The gap between those two things is where most people's preparations quietly fail. No item on this list illustrates that gap more clearly and more completely than canned sardines. They're not popular. They're not what most people instinctively reach for. They're not glamorous, and the mainstream prepper industry won't push them hard because there's limited profit in doing so. But in terms of nutritional completeness per unit volume, zero preparation readiness, and functional performance across the widest possible range of conditions, sardines represent the highest functional value of anything in this entire category. Here's what's inside a single small can. Complete protein. Long-chain omega-3 fatty acids in the form of DHA and EPA. Calcium from the soft, fully edible bones. Phosphorus, vitamin D. Meaningful dietary fat. That is a near-complete macronutrient and micronutrient profile in one container. Open it and every major biological need is at least partially addressed simultaneously. No combining required. No supplementation. No preparation. Just open and consume. The omega-3 content deserves its own specific moment. DHA and EPA are not efficiently produced by the human body. They must come from dietary sources, under sustained stress when cognitive demands are highest and every decision carries real consequences. Maintaining adequate omega-3 status directly supports the neurological function required to navigate crisis effectively. This isn't a marginal health benefit. It's a core operational resource, and sardines are among the most concentrated, shelf-stable sources available anywhere at any price point. The fact that this is the cheapest, least glamorous item on this list, providing the most complete nutrition, is either a coincidence or it isn't. The bones deserve a direct address here. Softened completely by the canning process, they are fully edible. Most people remove them instinctively. That's a mistake driven by habit rather than reason. Those bones provide calcium that requires zero preparation and zero additional resource expenditure. Discarding them means discarding something your skeletal and muscular systems will need more than you currently realize.